Faze Sensei, King Kenny, it was the most controversial and probably the closest fight we've seen in YouTube boxing to date. So today, in light of the fact that King Kenny is supposedly making a return, sometime in January, to quote-unquote defend his belt, we're going to determine if his reign as the Misfits champion is actually legitimate or if Sensei beat him. So we are going to go off actual boxing scoring, break this down shot for shot. So that means we're going to be looking at aggression, who landed the harder and more importantly cleaner punches, and if it comes down to it, ring gentlemanship in addition to effective defense, as those are the four criteria for boxing. Now there were 3 judges scoring the contest. It was pretty obvious. The second round went to Kenny, the first round went to Sensei. It's arguable for a 10-8, which I'm going to get into later if we need to, but for now, for argument's sake, we're going to call that a 10-9 for Sensei. One judge gave it a 10-10, but I mean, that's just not possible really. So the third and fourth rounds, those are the ones that the judges disagreed on. We're going to jump into the third round and determine who actually won that round. The round, here's an example of effective defense that I will be tallying on my own. I will not be putting this in the video unless it comes down to it. This is just an example of effective defense. King Kenny swayed out of the way of this shot and actually started to parry. Didn't quite get it in this screenshot. Then we move on. We see a light jab go down to the body from Faze Sensei. It was kind of hard to see from this angle with the referee's head in the way, but clearly he gets out of the way of King Kenny's jab and lands a jab of his own to the body. We're going to count that as a light strike for Faze Sensei. Next up right here, we get this double jab sequence for Faze Sensei where he actually lands 2 light jabs on King Kenny, 2 in a row. Those are both going to be considered light strikes. Then we move on. Here's a nice light left hook that King Kenny seems to land. It was a light strike because Sensei's swaying away from it. And right after that, what's this doing? This is setting up Sensei's heavy strike, and we know this is a heavy strike because of the reaction we get out of King Kenny. He's wobbled and barely able to stay standing. In response, Sensei charges forward as Kenny's backing up, lands a jab, and then on the way back, Kenny posts, but we're going to consider this a light jab for argument's sake, seeing as a lot of people are on the side of King Kenny here. In addition to that, Faze Sensei seems to land a light jab. Then from that, we have Sensei coming in. Now, both guys seem to try and kind of frame on one another. We're going to count this as a light jab for King Kenny as he's kind of framing on him. Then right here, the reason this is not going to be counted as a heavy strike for Faze Sensei is because the way he moves in, this is counted as a medium strike to the body. He lands a lot with the front of the glove, but turns over on lands a bit with the wrist. So we're going to count that as a medium strike. And then from range, Sensei once again sets up a big looping overhand right. They will slip off this jab from King Kenny and deliver on a massive right hand. Now we know this is a medium strike, not a heavy strike, is because it grazes off the chin of King Kenny. And we see the reaction of King Kenny. He's forced to kind of draw back in, look for the clinch. Now here we have a clinch exchange. Now this clinch exchange, nothing crazy happened, but essentially neither guy landed crazy big shots. King Kenny was able to land 2 light strikes. Sensei was able to land 2 light strikes. And Sensei actually seemed to land a pretty medium right hand the second the clinch was initiated. And for argument's sake, King Kenny was able to land 2 big uppercuts. One of them was pretty light, but the other one, he was holding Sensei's head down. And we're going to count that as a medium strike just for argument's sake. If we need to, we'll go back to it if it's that close. Then from range, Sensei eats a nice jab from King Kenny. King Kenny fires to the body, a light jab to the body for King Kenny. Then from range, here we see Sensei load up on a shovel hook to the body. Now, this could be considered a medium strike, but King Kenny's moving with a strike, and we're going to count that as a light strike for Faze Sensei. Next up, right here, for Sensei, he lands a light strike over the top, a shifting combination, overhand left on the temple of King Kenny. Only reason this is not heavy or medium is because of the reaction of Kenny and the way it just grazes off the temple. It does not really land. Next up, right here, we have a pretty interesting situation where neither guy lands, but both guys got very close. These are examples of effective defense from both men. Then right here, we have a nice light jab that gets through for King Kenny. Then we move on. Right here, we have a light jab that gets through for for Faze Sensei. King Kenny's shifting into the range, so it could be considered medium, but for argument's sake, once again, a lot of people are on the side of King Kenny, so we're going to say that's just a light strike for Sensei. Then right here, we see King Kenny kind of load up on a hook to the body. Sensei's able to pull with it and move with it. For that reason, it's a light strike to the body, just because of the response of Sensei and the way he fades away with it. In response, Sensei lands a light jab. And then right here from range, Sensei's able to slip off from Kenny's jab. It partially lands, so we might count that. I want to count that as light, and so we're gonna. Next here, we see Sensei really slip off and find a big right hook to the body. The way King Kenny was able to respond and move with the shot, we're gonna count that as a light strike for Sensei. And then here we get a pretty light shot from King Kenny. Nothing really doing. And then to end the round, King Kenny lands a light jab on Sensei. So clearly, a few judges got that third round wrong. Clearly, based on the strikes, numbers don't lie. Faze Sensei outstruck King Kenny. And when we look at even the effective defense department, according to my tally, and I know this was a bit more of a rough estimate, Sensei over tripled the amount of defense that King Kenny was able to put out in effective defensive maneuvers or moves. The volume was there, the power was there, better defense. Faze Sensei was the one that was actually pushing the exchanges. The only thing King Kenny had an edge in that round was the ring's generalmanship. However, it was still complete domination for Faze Sensei. That's round 3 to Sensei, 10-9. And when we go and look at the fourth round, which I just did, and instead of going and breaking it down frame by frame for you guys, I did it myself, and the tallies that I came to and the conclusion that I came to really show who really did win that round, and it was King Kenny. He outstruck Faze Sensei 13-8. Now, the only thing we could make in some argument for, Faze Sensei did land a medium strike, Kenny only landed light strikes, but King Kenny was the one pushing the pace of the fight and controlling the ring, and they roughly had the same amount of effective defensive techniques that were successful. So I scored this round to King Kenny. I don't think you really can. So now, yes, that's a draw under most jurisdictions. Right? Wrong. According to DAZN's own website, in an article published March 14th of this year, and before I do get into this quote, I do understand DAZN is not the sanctioning body. However, if this event is to be promoted as a professional boxing match, I feel like we can trust the promotional company, at least the company that helps to distribute it. I know Misfits is the promotion. However, they said, and I quote, "If a boxer is knocked down or hurt enough to prompt a standing count," that's what King Kenny got from Faze Sensei from the referee, "that fighter loses a point. So if a boxer dominates a round, controlling and landing better punches throughout, and also knocks their opponent down, the end result is a 10-8 round." Now, let's go back and highlight a standing count. That's a 10-8. And now I know they go on to talk about in this article, if they continue to dominate, there's so many other examples inside the world of boxing. A 10-8, whether it's from a knockdown or a standing 8, is nearly impossible to come back from and even get a 10-9. I mean, we look at when Tyson Fury got knocked down brutally by Deontay Wilder. What did he do? He came back and outboxed him for the remainder of that round. But what was that round scored? A 10-8. You cannot come back from a 10-8 in boxing. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to do, and there is no way in hell King Kenny did it. So this fight sort of was a robbery. Worst case scenario, this fight goes to a draw. So everyone that's been calling robbery is correct. King Kenny, I do recognize, won round 4-2. But Faze Sensei got the standing 8, which, according to DAZN, will create a 10-8 that you effectively cannot come back from. Therefore, it's 2-2, but really, I mean, it's hard to fully, this is simple, not real math, but essentially you can look at it like it's 3-2. When you get a 10-8 round, that's like winning 2 rounds in the world of boxing. So I don't understand how anyone could say this is not a robbery, especially when we go back and look at the facts. Numbers don't lie, and I just told you guys the full truth and nothing but the truth. So I hope you guys did enjoy this breakdown and analysis of robbery or not. King Kenny, Faze Sensei, final verdict. It was a robbery. Worst case scenario, that's a draw. Faze Sensei, man, if you weren't so nice, he'd probably try and appeal. Hope you guys did enjoy. Peace.